I know many people believe that life experience prepares us for everything, that after a certain age, nothing can truly surprise us anymore. But those people have clearly never faced their daughter-in-law knocking at the door with a fake lawyer beside her and a smile hiding betrayal. My name is Holly Peterson. I'm 62 years old, living in a quiet suburban town in Oregon, USA. This story began on a Thursday afternoon, when the sky was heavy and gray, warning that a storm was coming. The air was thick, humid, clinging to my skin. I was in the kitchen, ironing a few of Ethan's shirts, my son's even though he's already married. Because that's what mothers do, right? No matter how old our children get, we still care for them. I had just set the iron down when I heard the front door open, but it wasn't the familiar sound of Ethan coming home. His steps were always quiet, careful not to disturb the neighbors. This time, the door opened with a loud, firm click, like someone arriving to settle serious business. I glanced out the window. It was Ethan's car, but he wasn't alone. Melissa, my daughter-in-law, stepped out first. She was, as always, perfectly dressed, a navy dress, high heels tapping sharply against the porch tiles, hair tied neatly as if she'd just come from a salon. Behind her, Ethan followed slowly, eyes down, hands buried in his pockets. Then, from the back seat, a man I didn't know appeared. He looked to be about 50, wearing a tailored gray suit, carrying a leather briefcase, his expression stern, not someone you'd call a friendly visitor. My heart sank. It wasn't fear, it was instinct. The same mother's instinct that once made me wake in the middle of the night when Ethan was little and about to cry from a fever before he made a sound. It was that same instinct that told me something was wrong the day Mark, my husband, had his construction accident before the phone even rang. There are things we simply feel with every fiber of our being. I smoothed my hair, catching my reflection in the dark TV screen, then opened the door before they could ring the bell. Melissa's hand was already raised toward the doorbell. "Hi, Mom, Holly," she said with her usual bright smile. But there was something different in her eyes, a flicker of impatience and calculation. "We came by with a very special guest today." Ethan barely muttered, "Mom," then stepped back behind his wife, like a child hiding from trouble. The man in the suit stepped forward and extended his hand. "Mrs. Peterson, pleasure to meet you. I'm Richard Coleman, the family's attorney. I'm here to discuss a few important matters regarding the paperwork of this house." The way he said, "family," made me uneasy, as if I no longer belonged to that family, just an obstacle to be handled. I shook his hand tightly. His was soft, damp, lifeless. I instantly disliked him. "Come in," I said, steadying my tone. "It's quite a surprise to have visitors on a day like this." Melissa entered first, her eyes scanning the living room as though she were appraising every object. The lawyer followed, studying every corner. Ethan came in last, silent, shoulders tense, as if he'd rather be anywhere else. This house, Mark built it with his own hands more than 20 years ago. A modest but solid home. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a bright kitchen, and a warm living room. It wasn't luxurious, but every brick held his sweat and our love. He used to say, "This will be where we grow old together, Holly, where we'll watch our son grow up." Fate had other plans, but the house remained, and so did I. I invited them to sit on the sofa. Melissa sat first, crossing her legs like she owned the place, smoothing her dress. The lawyer opened his briefcase, pulling out a stack of documents. Ethan stayed standing, leaning against the wall, staring out the window, as if waiting for rain to save him. "Can I get anyone some coffee or tea?" I asked politely. "No need, Mom, Holly." Melissa cut in quickly, her tone brisk. "It's best we get straight to the point. There are a few documents that need your signature today." The word signature sliced through the air like a cold blade. I felt a chill down my spine but kept my smile. "What kind of documents?" I asked. Mr. Coleman slid a folder toward me, his voice silky and rehearsed. "Mrs. Peterson, we've been in contact with your son and daughter-in-law regarding the situation of this property. They're concerned about your safety. Living alone in such a large house, we've brought a very attractive offer to sell." His words hit like a punch to the gut. "We've been in contact with your son." As if my opinion didn't matter in my own home. A very attractive offer. As if this place were nothing more than a transaction. I turned to Ethan, waiting for him to say something to explain, to defend me. But he stayed silent, eyes fixed outside, ears flushed red just like when he was a boy caught doing something wrong. "An offer to sell the house," I repeated slowly, emphasizing each word. "That's right, Mom Holly," Melissa said, leaning forward with that fake warmth. "We found a lovely apartment for you, smaller, safer, with full-time staff. You wouldn't have to worry about a thing. Plus, you'd still have a nice amount left over to enjoy your retirement comfortably. Smaller, because I no longer deserved space. Safer, because they thought I was weak and helpless. Wouldn't have to worry, because to them, I was a burden. A nice amount left over. Because in their eyes, my home was just a dollar figure." The lawyer opened the folder and spread the papers across the table. I recognized a few forms from the notary's office, but others were unfamiliar. "Everything is nearly ready," he said, pulling out a gold pen from his pocket. "We just need your signature in a few places, and we can finalize everything by next week." In that instant, something inside me shifted like when you're tuning a radio and suddenly the static clears. The signal snapped into focus, and what I saw then was terrifyingly clear. Ethan's nervousness, Melissa's rush, the fake lawyer's overconfidence, the overly prepared documents, the rehearsed lines, everything was too smooth. They hadn't come to discuss anything. They'd come to inform me. This wasn't a proposal. It was a decision already made. All they needed was my signature, the final piece in their plan. But there was one problem with that plan. They misjudged the woman they were dealing with. I smiled a small, almost invisible smile, but one that carried over 30 years of life, countless struggles overcome, bills paid with my own hands, and a son I raised with every ounce of love I had. It was the kind of smile that said, "You have no idea who you're dealing with." "Well, how thoughtful of you both to think of me," I said softly. "But why don't we have a cup of coffee first? Something this important deserves a bit of hospitality, don't you think?" Melissa opened her mouth to object, but I was already walking toward the kitchen. No refusals accepted. "Ethan, you know how stubborn your mom is." For the first time that afternoon, my son smiled a sad, embarrassed little smile, but still a smile. For a moment, I saw that little boy who used to stand on a chair beside me, helping make coffee on Sunday mornings. As the coffee brewed, my mind raced. Every piece began to fall into place. Ethan's fewer visits, Melissa's casual questions about my papers, her eagerness to help with my accounts, her sudden concern for my mental health. They had planned everything except for one thing. I wasn't the confused old woman they thought I was. While waiting for the coffee, I gently touched the small cross around my neck, the one Mark gave me on our first wedding anniversary. "Watch over me, my love," I whispered. "Give me strength, because I'm going to need it." When I returned to the living room with the tray, they were still in their seats. Melissa was tapping her fingers impatiently on the table. The lawyer was arranging his papers. Ethan stared out the window at the gathering storm clouds. "Here we are," I said, placing the tray down. Hot coffee for a chilly afternoon. I poured each cup with calm, deliberate movements, a quiet reminder that this house was still mine. When everyone had their coffee, I sat in my favorite armchair, the same one where I once nursed Ethan, mended his school uniforms, and cried myself dry the day Mark passed away. That chair wasn't just furniture. It was my throne built from love and endurance. So, I said, folding my hands on my lap, why don't you explain to me exactly what this plan to sell my house is about? My voice had changed. It was no longer the gentle tone of a housewife. It was the voice of a woman who once raised a child alone, stood in front of a bank being told women can't open accounts without a husband, and pleaded with a school principal to give her son a fair chance because he deserved one. Only then did they begin to realize who they were really dealing with. And that stormy afternoon was just beginning. As they sat in uneasy silence, sipping their coffee, my mind drifted back through the years. I closed my eyes and let memory carry me to the beginning of it all, when this house was just a rough sketch on brown paper spread across the kitchen table of our first rented apartment. I met Mark when I was young, freshly moved from my parents' home in Nebraska. He was a construction worker, rough hands, but a smile bright enough to light up a room. He wasn't movie star handsome, but there was something about his eyes that made me feel safe every time I looked at him. He worked hard, up at 5 a.m., coming home covered in cement dust, but always bringing a story from the job site. One day, we'll have a house of our own, Holly, he'd say, sketching designs in the air. A real home, one that no one can ever take from us. He knew too well what it meant to have nowhere to belong. Orphaned young after a car accident, Mark had spent his childhood moving from one relative's home to another. I don't ever want you to live like that, he told me, gripping my hand. And I don't want our child to grow up without a place to call home. We married in a small ceremony at a local church. I wore my sister's old wedding dress, and he borrowed a suit from a friend. We had nothing but faith and dreams. 2 years later, Ethan was born, a chubby, quiet baby who slept soundly in my arms. Mark carried a photo of him in his shirt pocket for a week, showing it to every coworker at the site. "Look at my boy," he'd beam. "This little guy's gonna be an engineer, build houses even better than his old man." When Ethan was 3, Mark came home with news that changed our lives forever. He had bought a small piece of land on the outskirts of Portland. It wasn't big. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. Or rather, it would be, after years of paying it off with every hard-earned paycheck. It was just an empty lot, overgrown with grass, with a single old oak tree standing in the corner. To me, it was nothing but a field of weeds, but to him, it was paradise. "This will be where we build our castle," he said, and he was right. We did, brick by brick, weekend after weekend, holiday after holiday. Mark worked in construction all week, and in his spare time, he built our own house. I helped however I could, carrying materials, mixing cement, painting walls. Ethan played nearby, wearing the little yellow hard hat his father had given him. It took us years to finish that house, years of saving every penny, dreaming of each room, counting every brick. I still remember the day we installed the first door. Ethan was still a little boy, insisting on being the first to walk in. "It's our real house now, right, Mom?" he shouted, running through the empty rooms. Now no one can ever make us leave again, just like his father, Mark, had once promised. When we moved in, Ethan was still a child, a little prince exploring his own castle. Every room was an adventure, every corner a secret hiding spot. The house wasn't completely finished, the bathroom didn't have tiles yet, the kitchen floor was bare cement, and the walls were still unpainted. "We'll finish it bit by bit," Mark said, wrapping his arms around the two of us in that empty room. What matters is we finally have our own home. The years that followed were the happiest of my life. Mark got a job at a larger construction company in Portland, and Ethan quickly settled into his new school. I took sewing work from home to help with the bills. Little by little, the house became more complete. Tiled kitchen floors, polished wood in the living room, and a small rose garden I planted by the porch. Ethan grew fast. From a quiet little boy who loved toy bricks, he became a curious, energetic teenager. Dad, how do you know where to lay the bricks? Mom, why does our house look different from the others? When I grow up, I'll build a house even bigger than this one. Mark was always patient with him. He could sit for hours explaining foundations, framing, and finishes. A house isn't just walls and a roof, Ethan, he'd say. It's where we keep our memories, where we write our story. That's why it has to be built with love. He was always fixing something, adding a new touch. A cabinet, a wooden shelf, a small flower bed in the backyard. A house should grow with the family, he liked to say. It should change with us. I still remember one particular afternoon when Ethan was about 12. Mark came home, unusually cheerful. He'd just been offered a big project, great pay, but dangerous work at a high elevation. Just a few months, Holly, he said. With this money, we could pay off the house early. I didn't like the idea. Something inside me, that same instinct that never failed, told me something was wrong. Mark, we don't have to rush. The house is fine the way it is. But he'd already made up his mind. I want to make sure you and Ethan are safe. If anything ever happens to me, at least you'll have this house. As if he already knew his time was running out. The accident happened one morning in August. A scaffold was installed incorrectly. A strong gust of wind, a single misstep, and Mark fell from the 10th floor. He was gone before he even reached the hospital. Ethan was at school when I got the news. I remember every detail of that day. The smell of burnt beans on the stove when I ran out of the house, the doctor's face when he told me, and the suffocating silence during the drive home. How do you tell a 12-year-old boy that his father isn't coming back? When Ethan came home, I was still sitting on the sofa, still in my nurse's uniform from the morning shift. One look at me, and he knew. "Where's Dad, Mom?" he asked, his voice so small it broke me. "Come here, sweetheart," I said, pulling him close. "There's something I have to tell you." I saw the whole world collapse in his eyes. The cheerful, talkative boy vanished, replaced by a quiet, lost child. We held each other and cried on that sofa until the sun went down. The months that followed were the darkest of my life. On top of the grief, I had to face reality. The compensation from the company wasn't much, just enough to pay off the remaining mortgage. After that, all I had was my part-time nursing income, which barely covered food and bills. Ethan needed clothes, school supplies, food, medicine when he got sick. That was when I discovered I was better at sewing than I'd realized. At first, I just mended clothes for neighbors, then started making simple garments, until I had a small base of regular customers. In the mornings, I worked at the hospital. In the afternoons and evenings, I sat by the old sewing machine in the corner of our living room. Ethan helped however he could, sorting fabric by color, delivering finished clothes to nearby clients, tidying up while I worked. My son grew up too fast, carrying responsibilities no child should, but he never complained. "Mom, we'll be okay," he'd say whenever I worried about money. "Dad left us this house." And he was right. We were okay. Year after year, bill after bill, every dollar was stretched and measured. Ethan grew into a mature, determined young man. "I'll graduate college," he said. "I'll get a good job and take care of you." I stood by him through everything, The bad grades, the first heartbreaks, the anxiety before exams, and finally, the tears of joy when he was accepted into the business administration program at Oregon State University. On his graduation day, we both cried. If Mark were alive, he would have been so proud. Ethan soon found a job at a mid-sized company in Portland. The salary wasn't high, but it was a good start. He began helping with the household expenses, even though I told him not to. This house belongs to both of us, Mom. I want to help take care of it. Those were the most peaceful years. Ethan advanced in his career. I kept working as a nurse and part-time seamstress, and our small home remained our Prophet, warm little sanctuary. Every weekend, Ethan brought a girlfriend over for lunch. I always paid attention to who truly loved my son and who was just passing through his life. Then one day, Ethan brought Melissa home. Unlike the other girls before her, Melissa was confident, sharp, and full of ambition. She talked about goals, financial planning, and investments, things that fascinated a young man who had grown up simply, like Ethan. She helps me think about the future, Mom, Ethan said, his eyes bright. She knows how to make money work for us. Melissa was always polite to me, always smiling, but there was something in her eyes when she looked around the house that sent a chill down my spine, an unease I knew better than to ignore. It wasn't the natural curiosity of someone new, it was the calculating, appraising kind of look. "This house is so cozy, Mrs. Holly," Melissa said, gently running her hand across the wooden table. "It must be worth quite a bit now this neighborhood's really gone up in value." Comments like that became more frequent, always wrapped in sweetness, always paired with that same practiced smile. But I'd lived long enough to know when someone was admiring memories and when they were assessing property. Not long after, Ethan proposed to her. My son was both nervous and thrilled. She said, "Yes, Mom. We're getting married." I hugged him, congratulated him, pretended to share his excitement, but inside, that familiar instinct stirred again. The same instinct that once warned me of danger before Mark's accident. The wedding was simple, but beautiful. Melissa was radiant, Ethan was mesmerized, and I tried to quiet the unease in my heart. Maybe I'm just being paranoid, I told myself. Maybe it's just the fear of losing my son. But then I overheard Melissa talking to a few guests. Her voice tinged with excitement. "After the wedding, we're planning to make a few modern changes. We've got a lot of long-term plans." In that moment, I knew my instincts were right. And now, just a few months later, she was sitting in my living room with papers to sell my house and a fake lawyer beside her, living proof that I should have trusted my gut from the very beginning. More than 20 years of building and protecting this place, every wall soaked with memories, and yet they thought I'd just sign it all away on a rainy afternoon. Doubt doesn't strike all at once. It drips slow and steady, like a leak in the ceiling, until one day you realize the entire roof is stained. In the first few months after the wedding, Melissa played the perfect daughter-in-law. She brought flowers, complimented my cooking, asked about my health. She asked one Sunday afternoon while we were having coffee on the porch. These days, everyone stores things digitally. It's safer and more organized. I know someone really good who can help you with that. At the time, I thought she was just being kind. Melissa worked in digital marketing, so talking about technology made sense. But her eyes lit up strangely whenever she mentioned documents, and that made me wary. "Thank you, dear, but all my papers are in order," I said, pouring more coffee. "I've had the same trusted lawyer for years." I caught a fleeting shadow cross her face, quick, but telling. "Oh, that's great. But if you ever need help, just let me know. These things can get complicated, especially for, you know, your generation." Your generation. Those two words made my skin crawl, as if I were some antique that couldn't handle her own affairs. From then on, Melissa's visits became more frequent, and more deliberate. She always had an excuse to stop by, bringing a new recipe, asking to use the restroom, showing Ethan something on her phone. But her eyes never stopped moving, scanning every inch of the house. She'd ask seemingly innocent questions. This wall here, if you knocked it down, don't you think the living room would feel so much bigger? It would open up the space, and if you ever sell, it would raise the property value a lot. My home, the one Mark had built brick by brick with his own hands in her mouth, had become nothing more than an investment, an asset. Poor Ethan, my son, either didn't see it or refused to. He was captivated by this woman who talked about bright futures, smart investments, and modern living. Whenever I gently mentioned my concerns, he'd cut me off or defend her. Melissa's just trying to help, Mom. She knows about finances, about long-term planning. We have to think about the future. The future. It was always about the future. As if the present, our simple, honest life, didn't mean anything anymore. Then one Tuesday morning, everything changed. I was watering the garden when the phone rang. It was Mr. Campbell, from the local notary office, the same place where I'd registered the deed to this house over 20 years ago. "Mrs. Holly, I'm sorry to bother you," he said, "but a young woman came in today claiming to be your legal representative. She asked for information regarding the property documents." My hand froze. The hose slipped, spraying water all over the patio floor. "Representative?" I said slowly. "What did you just say?" "That's right," Mr. Campbell replied. "I thought it was strange, too. She had some documents with her and claimed you were ill and needed help handling your property affairs." "Ill?" "Mr. Campbell, I didn't send anyone, and I'm perfectly healthy." "I figured as much," he said. "That's why I called before giving out any information." She was very persistent, even showed me an ID card with your name on it. But I got suspicious. There's been a wave of scams like this lately. An ID card with my name on it? How could she possibly have that? I thanked Mr. Campbell and hung up, my hands trembling not from fear, but from anger. I ran straight to my room and opened the drawer where I kept my important papers. Everything was still there. My ID, tax records, driver's license. And then it hit me a few weeks earlier. Melissa had borrowed my ID, saying she wanted to check the correct spelling of my name for a birthday gift list. Oh, God. I had been so naive. I'd handed her my documents without a second thought. She must have taken a photo or made a copy when she went to the bathroom. That afternoon, I sat in the kitchen, pulled out my small notebook, and began writing down every detail, every strange question, every offhand comment, every suspicious gesture. All the pieces began to fit together like a dark puzzle. Melissa had been quietly investigating my finances, trying to find out whether I was still mentally sound, preparing to build a narrative that I was no longer capable of managing my own affairs. The next day, I decided to act. I put on my best clothes, grabbed my purse, and headed straight downtown. First stop, the notary office in Portland. I asked them to add a note to my file that any request involving my property must be verified directly with me by phone before any changes could be made. "You did the right thing, Mrs. Holly," said Mr. Campbell, the middle-aged notary, with a sympathetic tone. These days, scammers often target older adults. Older adults? I was 62, still working, still driving, still taking care of myself. But to the world, I had apparently crossed into the category of vulnerable. Second stop, the Wells Fargo Bank. I met with Evan, the branch manager, a polite young man, and asked to add an extra security code to my account. Any transaction or login without that code should automatically be locked, I told him. Evan nodded with a smile. "That's a very smart move, Mrs. Holly. We've seen a lot of cases recently where relatives take advantage of older clients." Experienced clients, I corrected, smiling faintly. I prefer that term. Third stop. My longtime lawyer, Mr. Martin, a man I had trusted for over 15 years. He was honest, with salt and pepper hair and sharp yet kind eyes. I told him everything: Melissa's strange questions, what had happened at the notary's office, and the growing unease that wouldn't leave me. You absolutely did the right thing coming here, Holly, he said. I'll prepare a few precautionary documents for you. A certificate confirming your full mental and legal capacity. A special power of attorney that's only valid with your direct consent. And we'll update your will. My will? I asked, startled. It's just a precaution, he said calmly. If anyone ever tries to challenge your mental competence, we'll have clear legal proof of your intent and clarity of mind. Think of it as your legal armor. I went home carrying a thick file, stamped, signed, official, proving I was completely sound, capable, and fully aware of what I wanted. It was my armor against every dark plan in motion. That evening, Ethan came over for dinner. He seemed off, restless, avoiding my eyes. Melissa didn't come, saying she had a headache. Mom, Ethan said quietly, I need to talk to you about something. Go ahead, son. Melissa thinks it might be better if you considered moving somewhere smaller, somewhere safer. So there it was, the first move in their plan. Ethan, this is my house. Why would I move out? It's too big for one person, Mom, and this neighborhood isn't as safe as it used to be. Do you worry about me? He lowered his head. Of course I do, Mom. I just want what's best for you. But as he spoke, he couldn't look me in the eye. After he left, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, watching the night sky shimmer with stars. The scent of jasmine drifted from the garden, the same garden Mark and I had planted together. This house wasn't just where I lived. It was the result of a lifetime of work, a lifetime of building, a lifetime of memories woven from love and loss. If Melissa thought she could take everything from me with a few sweet words and a forged document, she was very wrong. We can settle this today, Melissa said, tapping her manicured nails on the table, her tone impatient. Attorney Richard Coleman brought all the necessary paperwork. I looked at the man in the gray suit sitting up straight, trying to appear confident. He opened his briefcase, pulled out a thick stack of documents, and spread them across the table like he was dealing cards. Mrs. Holly, he said coldly, this is a very favorable offer. The apartment we've chosen for you is modern, fully equipped, and much safer for someone your age. Someone your age? There it was again. I smiled faintly. And what are your actual credentials, Mr. Attorney Richard Coleman? I asked sweetly, though my eyes were sharp as ice. He hesitated for a moment. I'm a lawyer specializing in real estate law. Interesting, I said, tilting my head slightly. Which university did you graduate from? Federal University, he answered, his voice faltering. I mean specifically which federal one? There are over 50 in the United States. Melissa quickly interrupted. Mrs. Holly, that's not important. Right now. What matters is resolving this house issue before things get more complicated. Complicated for whom? I asked evenly. Ethan stayed silent, staring out the window. My son looked like he'd rather be anywhere but in that room. From time to time, he glanced at me with pleading eyes, but said nothing. How interesting, I said, calmly, pouring more coffee. You've arranged everything so perfectly, without asking for my opinion even once. You've already picked the new apartment, haven't you? We're just thinking of you, Mom, Melissa said with a forced smile. We just want to make things easier. How thoughtful. That's the transfer of ownership contract. Very simple. You just need to sign here, here, and here. He pointed to 3 lines with his gold pen. Transfer to whom? I asked. To the company handling the sale of the property. And what's the company's name? The room fell into a heavy silence. Melissa and the man exchanged uneasy glances. All the information is in the contract, he muttered. Ah, I see. I slipped on my reading glasses and began reading aloud. Transfer of ownership for the property located at... I stopped. Oh, how interesting. It says here I'm transferring ownership of my house to Ethan Peterson and Melissa Carter Peterson. The air froze. So there's no company at all, is there? The house would go directly to you two. Melissa's composure cracked. Mrs. Hawley, it's just a formality. Afterward, we'll sell the house and buy you the new apartment. So, afterward, I emphasized, you'll sell my house. Ethan finally spoke, his voice rough. Mom, this is what's best. What's best, Ethan? My tone was sharper than I intended. You've sat in silence for an hour, and this is what you choose to say? He lowered his head. I stood, walked to the small cabinet by the window, and pulled out a folder, the one I had prepared for weeks, waiting for this exact moment. Since you've brought your paperwork, I said, settling back into my armchair. I have a few documents of my own. I pulled out the first sheet. This is a certificate of mental and legal competence signed by psychiatrist Dr. Martin Cole, confirming that I am fully sound of mind and capable of making all my own decisions. Melissa's face went pale. And this, I added, placing another sheet on the table, is a statement from my personal doctor confirming that I have no medical condition that could impair my judgment. Then I took out another paper with a bright red seal. And this, I said, is the formal complaint I filed with the Portland Police Department for fraud and forgery with the intent to seize my property. The room went completely silent. The so-called lawyer began clumsily gathering his papers, his hands trembling. Oh, but the best part is right here, I said, pulling out my phone and pressing play. Melissa's voice rang loud and clear through the speaker. Mr. Campbell, I'm Holly's legal representative. She's been having some health issues, so I need to handle the house documents on her behalf. Ethan's eyes widened. It was the first time he'd heard the proof with his own ears. This recording was sent to me by Mr. Campbell from the notary office, I said, staring straight at Melissa. Her face flushed with anger and humiliation. I can explain. Go ahead. I cut her off. Then explain this too. I held up my phone, showing a photo. This is the copy of my ID you took when you borrowed it to check my name for the birthday gift list. Mr. Campbell showed me this the same copy you used to impersonate me. The lawyer jumped up, panicking. I have to go. I have another appointment. Oh, please do, I said calmly. But before you leave, Mr. Richard Coleman, would you mind showing me your law license? He froze in the doorway. You don't have one, do you? Because you're not a lawyer. And by the way, pretending to be one is a criminal offense. So, should I call the police now, or will you get out of my house and never come back? He said nothing, turned around, and left, abandoning his briefcase on the chair. Ethan sat there, stunned, staring at me, then at his wife, as if watching a horror movie come to life. Melissa, he stammered. What is all this? She screamed. Your mother is just a paranoid old woman. I was only trying to help her live more comfortably. Help? I stood up, my voice colder than steel. By declaring me incompetent, forging documents, and hiring a fake lawyer? You don't understand, Melissa shouted. This house is worth a fortune. It's wasted on someone who doesn't even know how to enjoy it. And there it was, the naked truth. Ethan looked at her, as if seeing her real self for the first time. Melissa, you lied to me? I didn't lie. I just wanted to organize things better. Organize them better for who? I asked. For you two to sell my house and split the money? She said nothing. She didn't have to, the answer was written all over her face. I picked up my phone and dialed. "Attorney Martin, please come to my house. It's time to file the complaint, just as we discussed." Melissa's eyes went wide. "I already did. Fraud, forgery, and practicing law without a license that should be worth a few years behind bars." Ethan broke down, crying silent tears of shame and regret. He looked at me, his eyes red. "Mom, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know anything about this." I walked up to him and placed my hand on his cheek just like I used to when he was little and had fallen down. "I know, son. I know." But even as I said it, part of me died that afternoon because the boy I had raised, my Ethan, had chosen to trust a stranger over his own mother, and some choices can never be undone. When Attorney Martin arrived about half an hour later, the house was quiet. Melissa had stormed out like a hurricane, slamming the door so hard the painting on the wall rattled. Ethan still sat on the sofa, motionless, staring at his hands. "Mrs. Holly," my lawyer said as he entered. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine, Martin. Better than I've been in months." He handed me a sealed envelope. "Here are the documents you requested. The petition to declare you incompetent has been dismissed by the court, and we now have an official order preventing any change in the property title without your presence at notarization." I set the envelope on the table, right in front of Ethan. He looked up, confused. "Mom, what is this?" "It's proof that I'm not the senile old woman your wife made me out to be." I sat down beside him. "Melissa filed a petition asking the court to declare me legally incompetent so she could take control of my assets." Ethan's face turned pale. She never said a word to me about that." "Of course not," I replied. "Just like she never told you she contacted 3 real estate agencies to appraise the house or that she opened a joint account to receive the sale money." Attorney Martin nodded. "Everything's been documented and will be submitted as part of the case against her." Ethan buried his head in his hands, devastated. My God, how could I have been so blind? I said nothing. Some questions can only be answered by the one who asks them. After Attorney Martin left, it was just the two of us, sitting in a room heavy with truth. I went to the kitchen and brought back 2 glasses of water. Ethan drank deeply, like someone crossing a desert. "Mom, let me explain." "There's no need, Ethan." "There is," he said, standing up, his voice trembling. "I didn't know any of this. Melissa said you were forgetful, that living alone was dangerous. She even showed me some overdue bills, saying you'd forgotten to pay them." "What bills?" I asked. "Credit card, and a few from the pharmacy," Ethan answered, his voice trailing off. I opened the kitchen drawer, took out the folder I had carefully kept, and placed it in front of him. "Here," I said, "every payment receipt from the past 6 months. All paid on time, clear and organized." Ethan's eyes trembled as he looked at each piece of paper. "She faked them, Ethan. Melissa created fake bills to make you believe I was losing my mind." My son lowered his head. It was painful to watch, but necessary. He needed to understand just how cruel the woman he once called wife truly was. "How could she do that?" he whispered, his voice cracking. "Because you let her," I said, my tone firmer than I intended. "You gave her everything she needed about me, about this house, without asking a single question." Ethan began to cry again, but this time, it wasn't from shock. It was from guilt. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry." I sat beside him and took his hand. It was still the same hand I once held when he was a little boy, but now it carried the weight of adult mistakes. "Ethan, I forgive you. You were deceived, manipulated. Melissa was good at that. But I should have been more careful. I should have protected you." He looked up, eyes red. Protected me from what, Mom? From thinking you were the obstacle to my happiness, I said softly but firmly. The truth sometimes hurts, but it must be spoken. So what now? I asked. What will you do? Ethan stayed silent for a long moment, then said, more steadily than before, I can't live with someone who did that to you. To us. I felt a sudden sense of relief, but along with it came the quiet knowledge that things between us would never be the same again. Where will you stay? I asked. I don't know yet, he said. Maybe I'll rent a small apartment and start over. You can stay here, I offered. He shook his head. No, Mom. I need to rebuild my life. I need to prove to you, and to myself, that I'm strong enough to start again. I understood. That was both pride and true maturity. That evening, after Ethan left, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea in hand, gazing at the garden before me. The rose bushes I planted in my first year in this house were blooming. They had survived frost, drought, and storms. Just like me. I picked up the phone and called my dear neighbor. Rosa, can you stop by tomorrow? I have something to tell you. The next day, I told Rosa everything. She sat quietly, nodding slowly. Holly, you were so wise. Many people in your situation would have been fooled. It's not wisdom, Rosa, I said with a sad smile. It's just survival instinct. In the following weeks, my life took a new turn. The lawsuit against Melissa moved quickly. The evidence was undeniable. She was convicted of fraud and forgery. Ethan filed for divorce, and Melissa didn't even fight it. She was too busy facing her sentence in court. My son rented a small but tidy apartment downtown. Every week, he visited me, sometimes with flowers, sometimes with my favorite apple pie. Our conversations were different now, softer, more respectful. Ethan had come to understand that I wasn't just his mother, but a person independent, capable, and strong in my own right. Mom, he said one day, I want to learn how to take care of the garden, like Dad used to, like you still do. I think I need to understand the value of things built slowly. I smiled. That was the first real sign that my son had grown up. We decided that every Saturday morning, he'd come over to work in the garden with me. During those hours, we didn't talk much, but a new kind of peace quietly blossomed between us. He was learning that caring for something, nurturing it, is far harder than selling it. 6 months after that fateful afternoon, I received an unexpected letter. It was from Melissa, sent from the Women's Correctional Facility, where she was serving her sentence. Mrs. Holly, I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness, but I want you to know that I understand how wrong I was. You spent your whole life building that home, and I tried to take it all away in a few short weeks. It was cruel. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. One afternoon, as I was watering the garden, I reflected on everything that had happened. Melissa, whether she meant to or not, had taught me something valuable. That real strength doesn't come from taking what we want at any cost, but from protecting what we've built with dignity and love. My home still stood. My son had returned, not physically, but emotionally. And I realized that at 62, I was still strong enough to stand up for myself. I touched the little cross Mark once gave me and whispered, "We did it, my love. The house is still standing, and so am I." Because in the end, it doesn't matter how many storms we face. What matters is whether we can still stand when they pass. And I've always known how to stand tall. This story is a work of fiction inspired by true experiences, with names and locations changed to protect privacy. Still, the pain of being betrayed by family and the strength to rise again is something many of us can understand. Holly chose to speak up instead of staying silent. But if it were you, would you have the courage to do the same when the person who hurt you was someone you loved? Sometimes, kindness, and resilience are the deepest ways we can give back to life. And no matter how fierce the storm, God grants us the strength to stand firm and the faith to keep moving forward. Thank you for listening to this story. Stay until the end to watch the next two videos. Perhaps one of them will touch your heart today.